And with that familiar intro, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Candid Conversations about network marketing. Hi, I'm BK, and as usual, Dr. Wayne.
Hi, everyone. Hi, BK.
And today we're going to have a little bit of a slight difference or a slight diversion from our usual topic-led discussion. Today is going to be a free-for-all. Right, Dr. Wayne?
Yes, it certainly is. So there's many topics we can talk about, but we looked at talking about leadership, objections, and then a few other things as well. So really looking forward to allowing the brain to basically think of things on the fly.
Yeah, I think for myself, I find that sometimes, because this is a candid conversation about network marketing, right? Sometimes we try and I can't find a better word than glorify. Or we put our industry on too high a pedestal, in a sense, if you're involved in the industry. I'm not saying that we don't respect or we don't love the industry. We love the industry. What I'm saying is that we just need to make sure that we have a very healthy perception of where we are. That's what I mean, okay? And what I'm trying to say is that in essence, network marketing is, as a business, as an industry, it's not different from any other industries. It's not different from any other professions. It's not different from any other business. The things that are relevant in other industries, other businesses, are relevant in our industry. And sometimes we have a mismatch. That's what I feel. Do you feel the same, Dr. Wayne?
Yeah, definitely. There is this mismatch that seems to occur. And but the good thing is if we think about it the way you just said, it can be easily remedied in terms of thinking about it as a business, thinking about it in the same light. And it's exactly the same as why a lot of businesses are successful. Why are they successful? Let's just look at the reasons why they're successful. One, they basically then they identify a USP, which was spoken about many times before. They identify with their ideal client. And the ideal client has to be that well known that if I rang you up at 2:00 in the morning and punched you in the stomach, you should be able to say your USP. Because if we look at your ideal client, USP, avatar, there's many, many different words that you may have come across. When we're looking at universal laws, and that's what this is all about as well, understanding universal laws so that we can then actually use them in a way that is creating positiveness in our life. For example, the same as, we'll keep on using gravity because it's the easiest one to understand. If we work with gravity, now we know how to fly. But back in the 16th century or 15th century or whatever it was, we didn't know how to fly. But the information was in the information fields on how to fly. However, at that particular time, we didn't have the technology, so the information was not sought after or that well known. So it wasn't into everyone's space, so to speak. Today, I've lost my train of thought there. Where was I going with? Oh, with regards to universal laws, yeah. So with regards to universal laws, as we understand the first universal law, which is all about the information fields, we can then actually tap into those information fields to allow us then to gain the security of knowing a USP. So when we have the thought, when we have that indelibly imbibed, embossed into our grey matter, what happens then? It sends out a vibrationary frequency. So this vibrationary frequency now is picked up by those people who have that same frequency. And what happens then is the frequency that is not matched, we then don't actually attract those people. that we may not want in our business. Okay, so the first thing in business, I believe, is when I'm doing business coaching especially, is looking at someone's USP, someone's ideal client, which is really, really important. And then what we can do then, as we just mentioned, is then we use the immutable law of the law of mentalism, it's called, whereby if we look at putting it into the words of Western medicine, not Western medicine, but Western physics, it's then called the what do we say? Information fields. We then actually tap into the information fields.
Yeah, I mean, if we subscribe to the how the way the world and the universe was created with the Big Bang theory and idea that in physics they say that nothing that exists has not been created, and nothing can be destroyed, right? So it's just an ever expanding universe. So in a sense, it's like what Dr. Wayne has been saying, right? The things that are not present right now, it's not that we are not able to do it, just that we have not been able to piece together the necessary information or the pieces of the puzzle together, right? So once we are able to fathom and grab at the various pieces of information which already exist in the first place, then we can create whatever we desire because it's already been created, right? That's the whole idea. It seems like a stretch, but it is fascinating because and I was just saying in a couple of episodes ago that some of the things that we may have been mentioning in the show, and if you think it's a little bit of a far left field kind of idea, actually all you need to do is just simply look in front of you, right? And if you are watching us from a computer, in a computer monitor screen, or you're listening to us from a phone or an iPhone or Android phone, 10, 20, 30 years ago, none of these things were around. 10, 20, 30 years ago, all of these things were imaginations of somebody, right? Somebody's imagination. Yes. And it is around today because somebody thought about it, or rather, probably a big group of people, somebody thought up the glass, somebody thought up the transistor, somebody thought up the IC chips and all that, So it's fascinating that way, right? Because all these things were not around. But yet today they are around, right? So we kind of have to just reach into the greater sphere. I think in recent years, physics have come out with terms like information field. There's another one that I heard recently they call it the 0 point field, which is basically a repository of like everything there is possibly in the world in terms of knowledge and information. So these are all very fascinating things.
Yes, yeah, and so taking that what you said there before, BK, is that say if I'm someone who's developing a computer, what I do then is I now think outside the box, and what I do now is I tap into the information fields, I grab that information that's already there, and I bring it back, and we call it a download of information. When you're talking to quantum physics people, what they'll say is, well, this is where I want to get to. Now what I've got to do, I've seen that, I've visualized that. Now I've got to do now is put the steps in place to allow me to get to there. And it's exactly the same if we come back to business. The most important thing initially, to have a magnet that basically allows people to come to you that is in the type of person that you want. So are they coachable? Are they responsible? Then you can start writing these words down. And, when I was in business, really looking at growing my business way back, I actually had 63 qualities for my ideal client, 63 different qualities. And when you have that indelibly stamped in your brain, then what happens then is these people then start coming to you. And that's why we were one of the largest naturopathic clinics in Australia at the time. These days I'm semi-retired. I don't want that big clinic anymore, but you can do exactly the same thing with your network marketing business. When you have that ideal client right there at your fingertips, the law of attraction then works for you. And what it does is when you have so much focus and so much clarity, the law of resistance then basically dissipates. It basically then goes into the background. The law of attraction then comes towards you.
In a sense, you see, sometimes it's like we have made certain universal principles into practical applications. And why do I say that? For example, like if you are in a normal traditional business that is existing today, probably one of the first things you will do is to identify a unique customer or identify your ideal customer. And this is an exercise that most businesses will do because no business in the world will try to capture a universal audience. They will never be, I mean, very rarely. Most businesses, they know they exist to serve a certain sector or segment of the population. They have a certain type of person they want to create, right? They want to attract. And in essence, while it's a very practical application, it is rooted in the idea that Dr. Wayne just mentioned, because you want to attract a certain kind of people, and when you verbalize and you put it in hard writing that this is the kind of customer I want, you are kind of putting in place certain measures to say that, hey, universe, this is the people we want. Please bring them along, right? Please bring them to us. Please let them walk past our store and let them walk in, and then that's what you're doing, right? And of course, when you do that well, your business is going to thrive, right? And I guess this brings me back to my original point about how, as network marketing, as an industry, sometimes we set ourselves up for failure because we kind of think that everyone should be in network marketing, right? We kind of think, like the typical feeling that, especially when a new person joins and say, "Yeah, I talked to 5 of my friends and all 5 said no," right? "Hey, I talked to all my friends and all of them said no." It's like, or almost all of them say no, and then you get a sense that they feel disappointed that nobody seems to want to join them. But that's not true, because as an industry, we are thriving. There are people who are obviously opted to join this industry. It just so happens that maybe for that new person, they have a illusion that every single one of their friends must join them, which is not true, right? They have the illusion that, or they are not clear about who he or she should be targeting, and that's why the person has set themselves up for disappointment, right? Because they had the illusion that everyone should be in network marketing. It's never the case, because it can't be, right? While we are a huge industry, there will never be a day where 100% of everybody would be doing network marketing, right? So we have to be very clear and level-headed and understand that, right? Right, Dr. Wing?
Most definitely. And another way of putting marketing is, and we'll use the example of the podcast that we're actually doing now. So one of the worst things you can do, putting it into a visual, is have a 5 kilometer long, think of it like 5 kilometers in terms of how many people you want to get into your funnel, but it's only an inch deep. That is not sustainable because there's no depth to it. What we want is to find a niche. It's called a niche that's only about a centimeter wide, and it goes down 5 kilometers. Okay, so think of it like what we're doing here. We found that we love network marketing. That's a big niche. So it's 5 kilometers long, and it's not that deep in terms of if we look at it that way. But then what we did then is we went, okay, what can we do to help people in the network marketing? So what we're going to do now is we're going to really look at the mindset. There are tools and all the rest of it. So what we're doing now is we're bringing in our niche to actually then look at people specifically who want to look at the mindset, because we know, and I know, working in the industry of business coaching for so long, and even yourself, BK, as being an ex-teacher, you can get the smartest kid in the room, and if they don't basically apply themselves, it just doesn't really work. Even though you look at, and I look at sports people, for example, if you've got a sports person who is highly just natural in their field, they usually don't last because they don't have the mental capacity to basically take what they have naturally gifted to go to that next level. A lot of coaches will say, I'd rather someone who is basically finding it tough, but they've got the mental capacity to see themselves as first, as being the number one in their field. I'd rather that person. However, we all know if we can put the two together, we're going to end up with a brilliant person.
Yeah,
And yes, there
superstar.
are those,
So
yeah,
those are your
superstars.
superstars. Yeah.
They're the superstars, yeah. But unfortunately, a lot of gifted people don't end up with that way. So even looking at what we're doing is we're basically finding our niche. We basically found our ideal client. And when we look at our ideal client and we want to bring that into a podcast. So then we go, okay, what can we do to allow our message to get out there? So then we go, okay, we're going to do a podcast, get that message out there as well. So look at it that way, and that may help as well. And it is a fantastic magnet when you really get it.
Yeah, in fact, when we had a quick discussion over the week, this week as well, because as we were saying, right, in terms of skills training in the industry, there are plenty, right? In fact, your company, if you're involved in one already, would be providing you with ample skills training, right? Most of the time. As far as, and of course, we know in our industry, and another huge area that in fact, that may account more for your success than your skills training, which is your mindset or your personal growth training. And again, there are plenty of such trainings out there, right? There are plenty of good trainers, plenty of good materials, and so on. But we came to a simple conclusion, and as to we are saying that, hey, there's plenty of such things around, and perhaps when we ask a team to watch like a certain set of personal growth training, and after that, you notice that some people start to grow and start to fly and really excel in the business, but the same other group of persons that may have gone through the same set of personal growth training don't, right? So we think that there's a gap, there is a missing piece of the puzzle there, and this is where all the spiritual laws come in, and this is where what is going on in our mind really comes in, because it is how we actually respond to the training, right? Because the training is all there. In a sense, none of the things that we are saying in terms of even personal growth development is new, right? There are many great mentors and speakers out there that has done the same. But what we are trying to do, and we niche down to say that, what about those that seemingly feel stuck, right?
Yes,
how come I want to do as well as this other person? They seem to be going through the same trainings, the same skills training. They are in the same market and they are excelling, but I am stuck. So, and of course, because you want it, just like what Dr. Wayne was saying, a sports person, this person wants it, even though he may not be as talented, but he wants it and he's coachable. We feel that he can do well as well, right? In fact, as Dr. Wei was saying this just now, just to give everyone a hot tip, if you want to like niche down and identify certain types of prospects for your team, you may want to look at sports people, because if someone has done sports before in their earlier part of their life in school or whatever, or professionally or semi-professionally or maybe even amateurly, you will find that they understand what it takes to succeed, because they know sports, you need to put in hard work and practice. And we find that sports people also tend to do well in network marketing as well.
Yes, very, very true. Very true, yes. And they're used to doing a lot of exercises, whatever it may be, and they're used to also not achieving what they want, but by doing that, then they find the solutions and how they can achieve. So they're used to objections. They're used to not succeeding at certain levels, and then they push themselves to other levels to get to where they want to get to. And this is think of inside our being. We've talked about it before in subconscious and conscious. And we can even go deeper than that and think of it like your inner being. So your inner being represents about 95% of who we are. 5% of us is this humanistic form. So the humanistic form is the judgmental, is typically this is where the subconscious now comes in, and unfortunately it's normally this pessimistic side of us that comes through, and this is why it's difficult to create a new future, because we keep on creating our future from the past. So moving into what we want to achieve in our lives, knowing this information allows us then to look at objections and look at when we are not achieving what we want, the 5% of us, which is the human part of us, only sees the negatives, but the 95% of us, that is this inner being, only looks at the solutions. And if we can get out of our own way, now it mightn't sound very much 5%, but what happens with this 5% of our that is the negative in terms of this humanistic point of view, that those thoughts are locked into our physicality by way of emotions. So to give an example, so say, for example, if you can think of a time when you're really anxious in your life, and if you can bring it up very quickly, it means that that anxiety is actually taking over your life, but you don't know that it's taking over your life. So you might have an anxiety towards talking to people, for example. And what happens now is what you'll do is, rather than wait for the objection, what you'll do is you'll verbally diarrhea over this person, and you'll end up basically putting them off because you didn't ask the right questions because of your inner anxiety. However, the inner being, which represents 95%, which doesn't have judgment, which just comes from a solution-orientated, loving, compassionate, happy point of view, it's trying to show you the answers by, and you can look at it in another way, by the anxiety. So so think of it this way: if you feel anxiety, if you look at what it's trying to tell you, is that don't do what you normally do, verbally diarrhea. Think of it differently and then ask different questions. And if we can do that in everything, and this is what we've mentioned before, BK, in terms of silent witnessing, if we can be the silent witnesses of who we are rather than reacting but responding, we can change so much about who we are. And we talked about, you had a great little concept there about objections and piquing interest there before too, BK, that you might like to share.
Yeah, I mean, over the course of the weekend, one of my team members had a training. She did a great job. She did a great training on how to handle objections, which is important, right? Which is important. But at the end of the whole training, and as we were about to sum up, and I was just saying that, I was just asking the team, hey, do you all want to know what's the biggest secret to having no objections? And of course, naturally, everybody was interested to know, right? So the secret to this, and this goes back to my very first point when we started the podcast, which is the fact that we need to think of our business as a business. We need to learn that every other common sense principles that exist in the business world and in life applies to us, and which is, if we want to have less objections in our business and our prospecting, is that we need to start by asking the right people the right questions, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we don't do that. We should be asking someone, hey, are you open to taking a look at what I do? If not, no big deal, right? Or, hey, are you open to finding out more about how this product can help you and your family? If not, no big deal, right? And when the person says yes, then you start to tell them or send them the information that you want. And obviously, because they already said yes, your chance of getting an objection is lower, right? Much, much lower, right? And of course, even in those cases, and they do have objections, then that's where the objection training comes in, because sometimes you just have to help people work through some challenges that they may have, right? But the unfortunate situation is that a lot of times we have this illusion that everyone should join us, which is not true. And because we think everyone should join us, we just ask everyone and we just tell everyone the same things that we will tell only to an interested party. And therefore we face objection. And unfortunately, if you are unlucky, and if the first 5 person you felt should join you without you asking them whether they wanted to join you, and they said no, and that's how in other industries we call it career suicide, right?
Yes.
You did that. You went to talk to 5 people, never even asking them whether they were keen, and they all said no to you, and then kind of decided that, hey, this doesn't work for me. When the 6th person you asked could have been your superstar, right? He could have been a superstar. And so this is something that I find sometimes sadly, tragically humorous in a sense, because and it comes both ways. We don't treat network marketing as a business, and therefore other people's reaction to us also doesn't treat it as a business. As in, so for example, like one of the things I always joke with friends is that, hey, you don't you find that a lot of times people ask you, how much are you making in network marketing? Right? That's a very common question.
Yeah.
But in the typical social context, don't you think that's a very rude question to ask? Because if I'm a doctor or a lawyer or a typical businessman, nobody will think about asking me, hey, BK, how much are you making as a doctor? How much are you making this month? Nobody does that, because that's not the polite thing to do, right? That's not the correct way to interact socially with people. But yet, when you are a network marketer, somehow the typical laws of convention or social convention goes out the window, right? Why? Because we are at fault as well. Because we put across to the universe that this is a easy, fast money industry. It's kind of like a lottery ticket. You get it, you win big. It's not, right?
It's definitely not,
we have to be responsible. We have to be professional. We have to tell people that it is a proper business. We are proper business people. And therefore, nobody will ask you, hey, how much are you making? Because, hey, this is my business. Why should I be telling you how much I'm making? And how much I'm making has no relevance to how much you can be making. So I find it tragically humorous. I mean, that's how I say it. So what do you think, Dr. Wayne?
Oh, very, very, very true. Very, very true. And it goes back to what you're saying there about piquing interest. One of the second thing we started talking about was the ideal client. If you've got that ideal client, you basically can even feel that the person in front of you don't sometimes need to even say a word. You can actually feel that that person's not even really interested. You still say it to prove it, possibly. But a lot of the times, personally, I won't even ask people or try and pique their interest because of the feeling that I'm getting, and I'm already not aligned with that person. So when you truly get this, and it's the same as the person who comes in and I start talking to them, and they might say their biggest trouble is that they've been married 4 times, and I'll say to them, okay, what do you think the biggest problem is? Well, the first one had these challenges, and the second wife had these challenges, and I said, well, yeah. But what do you think is the biggest, the biggest challenge here? They said, oh, the third one had this challenge, and the fourth one had this. No. What do you think is the common denominator? What do you think is the biggest challenge? And of course, it was that person, the male, who basically had different ways of thinking about women, unfortunately. And the same as if I get a woman in here and they say exactly the same about their partners. And it's the way that we think that we actually attract people into our lives, because what we're after is the solution. Our inner being wants you to find the solution. But what happens is we keep on putting the same thoughts out there. Therefore, we keep on bringing the same person back in. So when someone is in front of you and it's piquing your interest, as you said before, BK, and I remember when I was on stage and when I used to run my 3-day conferences, I was the main speaker, and I was the owner of this particular business, marketing to the wellness professionals. So we're marketing to medical doctors and naturopaths and chiropractors and physios and cardiologists, all different types of wellness professionals in there. And after I talked about this ideal client topic, and I talked about marketing a little bit more, I would then ask, I'd go up to a particular person. I'd just say, okay, what do you do? And the gentleman would say, I'm a chiropractor. So, good. And I said, okay, what do you do? And the lady would say, I'm a doctor. I'm a doctor of pediatrics, for example. So I said, okay, what do you do? And I'd ask this 3 or 4 times. And then I'd get back up on stage, and then I'd say, well, that's nice, but what happens is you're not actually forming a conversation with the person who's asking the question. And they all kind of look at me, and I said, well, I look at it I look at that question in two ways. So if, for example, I'm out and I'm in a hurry and I'm in a conversation with someone, and someone then basically then does ask me, what do I do? If I want to close the conversation down real quick, I'll say, I'm a doctor, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a physio, I'm a naturopath. Because generally what happens is 80% of the population aren't really interested. A few are, that's for sure. However, if I put it differently when asked that question, what do I do? If I go, well, if I'll put it in a way that basically now identifies my ideal client. So I'll say something like, have you ever felt not well, or you've just had some pain in your body, or you felt that there's something better in life that with your health that you'd like to improve? Maybe yourself, maybe a loved one, or maybe a close friend that you'd like to help. Well, what I use is a 3-step process to help people to regain their health again. Now, once again, what I've done there is I've looked at my ideal client and then basically put that back to them. So if someone asks you, what do you do? Try and look at that as a reference point in, do I want to close this conversation down quickly? I'm a network marketer. Conversation just closes down really quickly. The same as even if I say I'm a naturopath, 80% of people will close that conversation down. I said, oh, that's good. That's about all that you'll get. But if you put it the other way and you put it into the benefits and you put it in a way that's going to help that client or that future prospect, or sorry, the person in front of you, future prospect, to actually get an idea in the benefits to them, what it could actually do for them and how it could help them, then what happens, you pique their interest and the objections go away, as you basically mentioned before, BK.
Yeah, I guess what Dr. Wayne is saying just now is that when you ask people what do, they actually don't answer the correct question. They tell you the answer to who they are.
Yeah.
They just gave you an answer to who they are. It's not what they do, right? It's kind of like, I kind of sometimes joke with friends and say that your answers are disjointed, because when I ask what do, you just told me the title of you. Right, you just say I'm a doctor. Yeah. That's your title. That's not what you do. And right. in any business, you exist to solve a problem, and you present a solution. So when people ask you what do you do, just like what Dr. Wayne just shared, right? You should mention a problem that you exist to solve. And if that problem resonates with the person in front of you, then he potentially could be a door opener and ask you, hey, yeah, I have that problem too. How can maybe we should talk more, So that gets the conversation going, rather than telling people your title. You are a doctor, yes. You are a chiropractor, you are a pediatrician, you are a network marketer. Right? That's the title. Yeah. You are a CEO. Right? And when I ask you, what do you do? I'm a CEO. That's your title. That's not what you do, right? And interestingly, just a segue to this at the same time, when you are trying to figure out if someone is keen to find out more or not, in fact, this is a kind of a simple exercise you can do. For example, if you meet a new person and you are kind of like just talking to each other and getting to know the person, and normally we would be asking the person questions. Hey, what do you do? And then if they say something, you ask them a few more questions and so on, right? The simple trick to thinking about whether this person is a suitable fit for your business is whether they reciprocate and ask you whether what is it you do. Because some people don't. I have met people where if I ask them, hey, what did you do? And ask them, and I'm curious about them, right? But they are not curious about me. They never ask, what do I do? Why are you here? And what is it? So if they are not even curious about what I do, I don't even try and ask them, are you open to finding out more about what I do? I mean, what we do, because they are not. They are not open to, they are not the curious type of person, which may kind of signal to you that they may not be a right fit for you, right? So that's a very simple exercise. When you ask people questions, if they don't reciprocate and ask you back, right? Hey, what do you do? And they're not curious people, then they will struggle in this industry. Because in our industry, we have to be curious about people. We have to love people. We have to love asking people questions. And they already kind of like disqualified themselves in the first round of an interview, so to speak, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's an interesting facet, isn't it? It's just fantastic. And as mentioned right right back and all the way through it, and even in other podcasts. The major thing is that once you come from your space of knowing who you are, and once you come from that space of knowing your ideal client, and you're worthy and you feel worthy within, that your being is now going to take these universal laws into the stratospheres, unbelievable things can occur. And what we've done recently, BK, haven't we? We've actually refined our ideal client, and which we're going to bring into the conversation a lot more. So this is what we've come up from. This is what we've come up. This is what we've put together for you, so you can identify with, so you can get an idea of what we mean. And we had a larger version of this that we started with, and what we've done now is we've refined it, because remembering everything in life is about refinement. And as BK and I were speaking about when we're putting this together during the week, is that as we roll with this, we may improve it as we move forward. And this is the most important part about life, is something may feel, yes, that feels okay now, but as you move through it, you can actually then improve it. So here's the new version that we've come up with. So this is what it sounds like. So here's the burning question that we believe is on everyone's network marketing lips. Why are others doing so well and I feel stuck? Why are others building their businesses easily without bugging their family, friends, and loved ones? And why are other people's teams actively recruiting? My team seems to be asleep, which is a good one. I'll repeat that. And why are other people's actively recruiting and my team seems asleep? These are the burning questions, and this podcast will give you the answers. So see how that morphs into a similar thing that what I talked about the health version that I gave before as well. So really think deeply into this ideal client, the type of person that you actually want, and then allow yourself to move forward in the knowing that those people will come towards you, to you.
Yeah, that's something that we have just came out with over the past week. Of course, we have mentioned it a few times that we would like to bring value to the industry, and we have kind of refined it and niched down even more. And hopefully that's something that will resonate with you. And of course, we have also said that it might be changed over time. I mean, it might be refined, it might be tweaked, It might be all those things, because we know in our industry, progression is perfection, right? Don't get yourself, don't get hung up on having to perfect everything before you move forward. Much like the show, we started with a very simple, we have improved over time as well, right? Hopefully it's an improvement. I mean, we certainly have done certain things along the way and made improvements, right? So I think that's a nice wrap up to our session today, because while we said that it was a free for all and kind of interesting, we went into interesting topics, and hope that has benefited you. So if you want to check out the other episodes that we have, you can find us at our website, and our website is at networkmarketerpodcast.com. The website is at networkmarketerpodcast.com. You would have seen that flash on the screen just now, right? And those are you can find our past episodes. There it is, networkmarketerpodcast.com. You can find our past episodes as well as the show notes, because Dr. Wayne has been very kind in producing the show notes for all of us. We're actually available on a few other podcast sites as well, including Apple's podcast and Spotify and all those places. So do just look for us, right? And if you want to dive deeper straight away, you're like me, eager beaver, you want to dive straight into the universal laws, we have a fully fleshed out program at 5, that's the numerical number 5, 5hiddenreasons.com. So check us out at those places as well. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Dr. Wayne, for an interesting episode, and as usual. And please do help us to like and share wherever you are finding us, so that more people can get to know us. Thank you, and we see you next week.
Thanks, BK. Thanks, everyone.